And go ahead and grab that blanket, and we're gonna start in a seat today. And so with the blanket, what we wanna do is just create a little bit of lift in the hips. Thank you, Bruiser. Yes, that's exactly what we're gonna do. So maybe folding your blanket or your towel, just to have like a couple inches of thickness, and then setting it down, and then coming onto, onto the edge of the blanket, and then crossing your legs, maybe coming into like an easy seat this way, if that's comfortable, maybe staggering the feet. If you're comfortable in half lotus, maybe drawing one of your feet up in toward the pelvis. And if this doesn't feel good at all, you can even come into hero's pose. So sitting back on the heels, this just might be a little bit more uncomfortable for the length of time, but just get comfortable for our initial setup here. Coming into a seat. Let's close the eyes. We're gonna take a cleansing breath just to get us settled into this seat here. So deep inhale, fill up the lungs to the top. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. That felt so good. Let's do that 2 more times. Deep inhale, fill up the lungs. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. One more time, big, deep inhale, fill up the lungs. Let's hold it at the top. Taking another sip of air. Big sigh out. Allow your hands to rest comfortably in your lap, maybe on your legs. And start to come into this moment on the mat, just becoming present, starting to leave behind anything that we had carrying with us from the day, our work schedule, school schedule, family stuff, personal stuff. Just start to bring your awareness into the space that you're in. So noticing first maybe the temperature of the room. So if you have maybe some skin that's exposed, or your face, your arms, maybe your feet, legs, just noticing the air, the temperature of the air resting on your skin. And then maybe sensing the amount of light that's in the room. So whether you have light that's centered in the room, or maybe you have a lamp on that's coming from another corner, but just getting a sense for the light and the dark in the space that's around you. And then maybe take your attention outside of the room, maybe just imagining the goings on of whatever life has outside of the space that you're in. And then maybe going beyond that, maybe to the outside. Maybe imagining what the temperature would be like outside. Maybe imagining what the sounds would be like. Would you hear a car or people? Maybe the snow has silenced the space outside. Maybe you can hear Bruiser barking all the way from Highland, California. And then maybe taking your attention even further, maybe into the city in which you live or the town that you're living in. Maybe imagining, the busyness of the stoplights, or even imagining people in their homes and in businesses. And going beyond that, maybe into just imagining the state that you're in. And again, what fills up that space? People, animals, buildings, mountains, trees. And then maybe take your attention to the planet and imagining that there's no noise, the vacuum of space, the vacuum of sound, that there is no noise. And then envisioning this beautiful planet spinning, moving with all of this amazing life resting on it. And then traveling all the way back down from the planet to the state, to your city or town, to the space outside, to your room, to the space on your mat, back to the noises in your space and the temperature in your skin. And then bring your attention to your breath. Noticing the natural inhale and exhale of the breath here. Noticing where the inhale lands in the body. Maybe that's the chest or the belly. And noticing the space that it creates when it leaves the body. And I'm not going to cue any specific breath for our practice today, but if you would like to use an equal part breath, so if you would like to change the breath pattern that you're currently using, maybe make it a 3-part inhale and a 3-count exhale. Sorry, 3-count inhale, 3-count exhale. I'll give you that option to set that up. And I'd like you to now imagine the spine growing tall. So maybe sitting a little bit firmer into the sit bones. And then sit up a little taller. And then imagine that the spine, each of the vertebrae in the spine are kind of being stretched and pulled. So there's this nice cushion of space between each one of your vertebrae, each one of your discs in your spine. There's a lightness in your spine. And as we practice today, I invite you to try and keep this lightness in the spine, this space that we've created in the spine between each of the vertebrae. Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and open the eyes. And we're going to come into butterfly pose. So from sitting on, we're going to stay propped up on your blanket or your towel. We're coming into butterfly pose. So taking the soles of the feet and allowing them to come together. And I invite you to play with the positioning. So actually, let's start with the feet kind of out a little bit further in front of us. So we have this kind of nice wide, maybe diamond shape made with our legs. And so the knees are coming out to the side. And then just sitting and pausing here, noticing how this feels. And so if this feels like a big stretch already, you're gonna stay here. If this feels like a lot in the hips and the low back, or maybe on the inner groin, you're gonna stay here. We're gonna take our hands and we're gonna place them on the inside of the ankles, or holding on to the ankles. And then find that length in the spine. And then on your exhale, keeping the spine long, starting to hinge and fold forward, and pausing at your first line of resistance. And so depending on where you feel this, maybe it's the outside of the hips, maybe the inside of the legs, that's where you're pausing. And you can keep your eyes open, or if you would like to maybe find an even deeper connection with the body and with your breath, maybe experiment with closing the eyes and imagining that breath coming in into the nose, traveling down the spine, and coming and wrapping around your hips, your low back, and into your legs. Just imagine that breath. With every inhale comes a little bit of love and a little bit of care for this part of your body. And if you're happy here, you can stay just as you are, or if you would like and you have this space and would like to fold a little bit more forward, you can go ahead and round the spine and allow the forehead to reach down toward your feet. Now, no bonus points if the head touches the feet. And again, using that breath to invite in some love, some self-care, traveling down the spine and then splitting out, touching onto the hips, the outsides and the insides of the legs. And breathe. I love you, buddy. You're very sweet. On your next exhale, you're going to very slowly round the spine up, using the hands to assist, and allow the head to come up last. And now we're going to take another variation of this pose. So taking the feet and drawing them in a little bit closer to the groin. So there's a shorter distance between the heels and the groin. And then you're going to take your hands and place them again on the ankles, and then grow tall in the spine. Again, finding that space between each of the vertebrae, each of the discs in your spine. And then take an inhale. So either you stay here if you're feeling a lot here, or on your exhale, keeping the spine long, hinging forward, and pausing at your first line of resistance. And then noticing here, maybe you feel the sensation stronger in maybe the insides of the legs. But just noticing where you feel this. And then if you'd like to take it deeper, taking another inhale, and then on your exhale, folding forward a little bit more, and maybe rounding the spine and allowing the head to tilt forward and drip down toward your toes. And again, no bonus points if your head reaches your feet. If it does, it just means you have to work harder. Yeah. Maybe closing the eyes again, imagining the breath traveling down the spine, splitting out into the hips Maybe spiraling around your thighs, wrapping the inner and the outer flesh of the thighs with love, self-care, and with healing. On your next exhale, allowing your spine to roll up, head comes up last. And from here, we're going to come into straddle pose. So let's actually take, hands are going to come behind the knees and allow the knees, kind of closing the knees together, almost like you're closing a book. And then place the hands behind the back. And then we're going to tick-tock the knees from side to side. Just kind of loosen things up a little bit. And we're sitting like that for a while. Maybe move some of that flesh around underneath your bum. All right, and then from here, we're going to come into straddle pose. So allowing the left leg to come out to the left and the right leg to come out to the right. And this, you're going to take it as far as feels comfortable in your body. So again, honoring that we have these skeletal differences in our body, and the degree in which your legs open are going to look different than how another person's legs are going to look. So taking the aesthetic idea out and just honoring what this feels like, what this pose feels like in your body. So growing tall in your spine again, take an inhale. And then on the exhale, again, hinging forward at the hips, keeping the spine long, pausing at your first line of resistance, and you can allow the hands to come down onto the earth to help brace and support your torso here. Keep the feet flexed, toes are pointing up toward the sky. And then see if you can relax and soften the tops of the thighs. These quads like to get involved, but we're trying to get into the backs of the legs right now. We don't need the quads involved. If you'd like to go deeper on your next exhale, maybe walking those hands a little bit further forward. And I'll give you a couple more rounds of breath here. And if you would like to round the spine after your second round of breath and take that variation, you can, just to release the low back and noticing how that changes the pose for you. And wherever you are in the expression of this pose, maybe closing the eyes. And again, imagining the breath traveling in, going down the length of the spine, splitting at the hips, and then traveling, bringing some love, self-care, and healing to the backs of the legs. On your next exhale, you're going to walk the hands back, assisting the torso up. Head comes up last. And then we're going to bend the knees, draw them in together very gently. And again, let's take those little tick-tock from side to side. All right, and we're coming into tabletop pose from here. So just shifting over onto all fours. You can use if you have any sensitivity with the knees, you can actually use your towel or your blanket, and you can take it. We will spend a little bit of time here on our knees, so using that towel to support and cushion the knees will feel good. And even if you don't need it, maybe experiment with it. It still feels really nice to do something loving and kind to our bodies. So that might be a nice option. And then coming into our tabletop, we're stacking shoulders over wrists, and then hands are about shoulder distance apart. The index finger is pointing toward the top of the mat. So think like you're creating like a number 11 with your fingers, and then or with your index fingers, and then your fingers are spread out and you're pressing into all 10 fingers. lifting out of the shoulders, creating space in the armpits, like hollowing out the armpits. Imagine you're hollowing out the armpits there. And then knees are stacked below hips, about hip distance. And then toes can be tucked or untucked. It's just a personal preference, whatever you prefer. And then draw the navel up into the spine. So we're kind of activating the core here in this tabletop pose. And then again, see if you can find and create length in the spine. So imagining that spacing happening between each of your vertebrae, reaching out through the crown of your head. This here is your tabletop pose. Just breathe for a few moments. And we're going to take some hip circles tonight. So we're going to kick the hip over to the right, and then we're going to dip all the way back and kind of create these like scooping half circles until you come up to the left, kick the hip over to the left, and scoop all the way back, coming over to the right. So we're just getting into the hips. We're just waking up the joints. We're getting into the glutes a little bit. Just feeling good in our bodies here. We'll do this for just a couple more rounds of breath. And then find some stillness. Sink the hips back, allow the torso to fold over the thighs, coming into child's pose. So arms can stay long in front of you here, releasing the forehead down to the earth. And just take a moment here to pause. I like to use this opportunity to remind you that this is your wisdom pose. This is the pose that you come to if at any point your practice becomes you've lost your breath, or the mind becomes erratic and chaotic and you need to slow down, or anything else that comes up for you in your practice. This is a place for you to go to reset and reconnect with the breath. And only you, I call this the wisdom pose because only you know when you need this pose. There's no one else that can tell you when you need this pose. All right, and when you're ready, shifting back up, coming back into our tabletop pose, and coming to low and from here, so the right foot. So maybe taking that right foot, grabbing it around the ankle, and then placing it between the hands at the top of the mat. And then scooch that left knee back just a little bit, maybe an inch or two, and sink the hip in so we can start to get into this left hip flexor a little bit. And then you can keep the hands planted here if you like, and this doesn't create too much compression in the front body or in your thighs. Or you can even come up onto fingertips. If you have a block available, you can use a yoga block, or maybe even coming up all the way and placing your hands and challenging the balance a little bit and placing the hands, stacking them over that right thigh. Maybe sink a little bit deeper, making sure that both hip points are pointed toward the top of the mat so that we're not opened up to the left. We have our closed off, pointing toward the top of the mat. And we want to find a stacking of the knee over ankle. So we avoid unnecessary pressure in the knee joint. So protect that knee joint, keeping it stacked over that ankle here. Okay. And if your hands are on the earth, or even if you're in this balancing position, maybe experiment closing the eyes and imagine the breath traveling in, coming down the front body now, and traveling over that front left thigh. So sending that love, that self-care, that healing energy, that life into that left hip flexor. If you took that lifted up option, go ahead and plant the hands. And we'll allow the we're coming into pigeon pose from here. Sorry, I'm stuttering. Walking the right foot toward the left side of the mat. And if you'd like, walking the right foot over to the left side of the mat, and then you're going to draw the right knee up toward the right wrist here. And I want to use this opportunity to kind of debunk this aesthetic idea that we have, this idea that pigeon pose should look a certain way. So we oftentimes will see that yoga teachers will cue that this shin should be in alignment and parallel with the top of the mat. And that's just not healthy for most of our bodies. Again, honoring and acknowledging that we are all skeletal, we have skeletal differences, that it's not, that will never happen for some of our bodies. So allowing this right foot to come in even closer to the groin, because the whole purpose, what we're trying to do in this pose is to get into this back right hip and glute. So I don't need my leg to be parallel with the top of my mat in order for me to get into my glute. So I have my right foot tucked in pretty deep to my groin. And then maybe scooching that left leg back a little bit more. So I tucked my toes and I kind of pull my knee back just a little bit more, and then I untuck them. And then looking back at that left leg and just noticing if it's coming straight out from that hip socket. So it's going to come straight out behind me. So we don't want it splayed out to the right, and we don't want it tucking into the left. So it's directly behind me. And then you might be feeling plenty of sensation in that right hip from right here. So you can stay. If you would like to deepen the stretch and deepen the sensation, maybe coming down onto your forearms. I invite you to pause here before considering a deeper variation and just noticing how this feels. And if you would like to try to go a little bit further, maybe stacking palms, maybe allowing the torso to rest on that right leg, that calf, and maybe allowing the forehead to rest onto the earth, but only if that's what you need. So just remember that more isn't better, it's just more. And only you have the wisdom of your body to know the difference and what you need today. Draw that breath in. Allow the breath to travel down the length of the spine and coming out around that right glute, that right hip. Sending that love, that healing, that life energy. Come up onto, if you took a deeper variation, go ahead and start to your way back up. And we're going to make this a pretty, I think it's a fun, but a pretty fun and easy transition. So all we're going to do is we're going to come over and kind of allow sink into that right hip. So just kind of coming up and sitting onto the right, and then we're going to bend this right knee, and it's going to come onto the inside of the right foot. And then you can play with left foot variation. So we're coming into deer pose. So this left foot can either tuck in toward the glute here, or you can keep it flexed and pulled out, or maybe you need a deeper flexion in that knee, so you can bend the knee. So just playing with what feels good here in your body. Again, honoring that what it looks like for one is going to look different for another. And then from here, we're going to inhale, grow tall in our spine, and exhale, turn the torso to the right. So left hand can come onto the left thigh, and then place that right hand down onto the earth, a little bit behind that right glute. And then your option is to stay here, or If it feels okay, start to lower down onto the earth. So maybe experimenting with coming onto your forearms. And this can be a really deep sensation, a real deep twist. So just honoring, again, what you need today and what feels good in your body. If you want to go further, maybe stacking palms, allow the forehead to rest down onto the palms. And then take an inhale and allow that breath to maybe just travel down the left side body, traveling out the left hip. If you took a deeper variation, go ahead and start to walk back up. Very slowly coming back in towards center. And then we're going to meet back in our tabletop pose and do all of that on the left. So from tabletop, taking that left foot, maybe grabbing the left foot with your left hand, and then just placing it at the top of the mat between your hands. And then maybe scooching, tucking the right toes and scooching that right knee back, maybe a couple inches or two, just so we can get into that right hip flexor. And then I'm sinking into the hips a little bit. And then again, options staying here, allowing the hands to stay planted, maybe coming up onto fingertips, or maybe challenging the balance and placing the hands on the thighs. And checking in again with the hip points, making sure they're facing toward the top of the mat. And if you'd like to challenge the balance even more, closing the eyes and allowing the breath to travel down the front body and down that right hip flexor. And come back down, allow the hands to plant back onto the earth. And then we're going to walk that left foot onto the outside edge of the mat. And then that left knee come up toward the left wrist. And then allowing that right leg to scoot back. So I just tuck my toes and then kind of pull the leg back a little bit. And then looking back, making sure that that right leg is in line with my right glute, coming straight out of that hip. Making sure that I'm not feeling any pain, any pinching in that left knee. And then option, you can stay here, or maybe experiment with lowering down to the earth onto the forearms. Or maybe coming on to stacking palms and allow the forehead to rest on the palms. And close the eyes. And allow the breath to travel down the spine and coming out into that left glute, left hip, left leg. I don't know if you guys can hear Bruiser over here snoring. All right, if you took a deeper variation, go ahead and start to lift yourself up. And we're just coming over onto that left hip and drawing the right knee now to be in line with the left foot. And then again, just taking the option with this left foot, so you can either scooch and tuck it in here if that feels okay on the knee, or you can keep it out to the side. So just playing around again, doing what feels good for you, protecting that knee joint. And then grow tall in the spine, take an inhale. And then on exhale, turning everything over to the left. Allow the hands maybe to come down to the earth. And very slowly walking yourself out, coming onto the forearms, and maybe stacking palms. Allow the breath to travel in and coming down the length of that right side body, out the right hip. Come back up if you've taken a deeper variation, walking the hands in, come back to center. And we're going to take child's pose from here. So from tabletop, you can come back to your tabletop, stacking hands, and shifting the hips back, pushing the belly over the thighs, releasing the top of the head, the forehead down to the earth. Child's pose. And I'm going to check time because that always is. Okay, good. And when you're ready, sitting back up, coming on to, we're going to actually meet on our backs from here. And you can take your blanket and set it aside if you were using that for the knees. Just set it aside. We are going to take legs to the sky, and this might actually feel really nice under the hips using that blanket. So if you've got it folded, coming onto the back, and then maybe very gently just lifting the hips up and allow the blanket to come underneath the hips and low back. It might just feel like a nice little point of support and contact, gentle contact and support for the hips. And then allow the arms to come down to your sides. And then inhale, draw the knees in toward the chest. And then exhale, releasing the heels to the sky. And let's point and flex the feet. Roll out your ankles. Maybe just take whatever movement sounds good here. And then find some stillness. And then flexing those feet, drawing the toes back toward your nose. And then keeping a slight bend in the knees. So we don't want to hyperextend the knee, but we still want to get into that backside body, backside of the legs. And maybe even drawing the thighs a little bit closer to the torso, a little bit closer to the belly. And breathing. So now here, imagining the breath traveling inside, down the length of the back now, and then coming up the back side of both of the legs. Sending that love, sending that healing. On your next exhale, draw the knees into the chest. And let's take hands over knees, and we're going to pull the knees out to the side, and then draw the knees in toward the armpits. So this probably isn't a really big movement. It doesn't go very far. And so option to stay here in this modified happy baby or happy baby pose, or you can flex the feet and allow the feet to come up and creating this kind of 90-degree bend in the knees. And then your hands can be placed behind thighs, kind of pulling and drawing the knees in toward the armpits. Or you can even hold on to maybe the ankles. That feels good. or if you can reach the outsides of the feet, or maybe even your peace fingers, wrap in, hook onto your big toe, and your arms are on the inside of the leg here, pulling those knees in. Oh, it feels so good. Maybe close the eyes, sending the breath down the length of the back of the body, and then coming up, splitting around your thighs and the backs of the legs. Allow the knees to come back into center together. Allow the arms come out to the side like a T. Take an inhale. And then on the exhale, we're going to take an easy twist to the left. So allowing the knees to fall over to the left-hand side. Ooh, this is a good one tonight, you guys. Oh, keeping the shoulder planted onto the earth. Sending that breath down from the armpit along the right side of the body into that into the right hip, low back. Your next inhale, draw the knees back into center, pulling the knees into the chest, keeping the arms out to the side. And then on the exhale, knees fall over to the right. Oh, it feels so good. That left shoulder stays anchored into the earth. Sending the breath down that left side body. On your next inhale, bring everything back to center. And you can release the feet down to the earth. And I'm going to give you the option, if you like this blanket here or your towel underneath your hips here, you're welcome to experiment with it in Shavasana. It might feel really nice and supportive on the backside of your low back and your hips. You could also take your blanket or your towel and place it underneath the neck for a little extra support and some cushion. Or you can even roll it all the way up to this little like taquito burrito thing and allow it to come underneath the knees for Shavasana to support your legs, and that might provide a nice release in the low back. So this is my personal favorite, is having support under the knees. Allow the legs to come down long, maybe feet come out the width of the mat, and allow the feet to splay out to the sides. Arms come down by your side, tuck your shoulder blades in so that the torso is resting and kind of pulling the hands open. Palms are facing up to the sky. And before I release you to Shavasana, I invite you to now draw in a little bit of gratitude for the work that your body put in for you this evening. So take a deep inhale, fill up the lungs. This is your inhale of gratitude. And then open mouth, exhale, let it go. Enjoy these next few moments of Shavasana.
Start to bring a little awareness back to the body. Maybe wiggling fingers and toes. Maybe invite in a deeper inhale, breath. You are welcome to stay in this pose. Or if you would like to join me in a seat. Hands coming to heart center in Anjali Mudra. It is truly an honor to sit here in this seat and share the magic of this practice. It fills my heart with joy to see each of your faces in these tiny little squares. And you truly each honor me, and it is a blessing to have you on my journey. The light in me sees and honors the light in each of you. Namaste. I love you guys.